how do I convince a customer to trust me? And sales is nothing more than transferring trust from me, the salesperson, to you. That's all sales is. I don't have to just sell to my perfect customer, but it's really good if I can get as close as I possibly can to that perfection. Most companies that are small have salespeople in them that didn't want to be salespeople when they started their life. So AI can make good salespeople great and make great salespeople wealthy.
Welcome to the Cincinnati Business Podcast, where we give you practical tips and tricks to grow yourself and your business. And brought to you by the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. Sean O'Shaughnessy, welcome so much to the show. I'm excited to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. I'm looking forward to it. And you have a beautiful studio, and I'm totally impressed.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. We love this place. So today I want to talk about sales, especially from somebody like yourself who's been doing this for a really long time. I think according to your LinkedIn, like over 30 years that you've been doing.
40 years.
Over 40 years.
Over 40 years.
Whoa, okay. That wasn't updated. I need to know that. Okay. That's awesome. So what I really am curious about today is kind of understanding a little bit about your process, a little bit about your the things that you notice when you walk into an organization and how you can help them. So I want to dig into all of that, but could you give us kind of a short synopsis of who you are and why this conversation is so close to you?
Okay, sure. So 40 years in sales, my first 35, I worked for somebody else. I worked for a company, and we can talk about those companies if we have to. But after 35 years, COVID hit, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next in my life. And somebody says, Sean, you should be a fractional VP of sales. And I looked at that person who was somebody I really respected. He was actually the chairman of the board of the company that I was working for at the time. And I was like, I don't know what that is. He goes, Sean, you're really smart. Go figure that out, but you should really do this. I called him up 6 weeks later, and I said, yeah, I think I'm going to do it. I figured out how to do it. I found some people that do fractional VPs of sales. And he goes, great, send me a quote. I'll be your first customer, because one of his other investments needed sales help. And then he called me up 3 weeks later and said, I have another one for you. And so my career as my company started within the first 6 weeks. I had 3 clients. And I haven't looked back, right? There's such a big need out there for companies that are struggling getting from whatever revenue they're at, whether they're at 0 or 50 million or 100 million, but they can't figure out how to get to the next stage in that process. And because of my career where I've worked for mammoth companies and small companies, I've done some startups that frankly didn't start. And so I kind of know what not to do and what to do right and what to do wrong. And so I try to steer people away from all the mistakes that I have made or I've watched other people make, and try to keep them on the straight and narrow of like, do this because it works, and try to help them be successful in growing a sales organization.
I love that. Well, I think your bio on LinkedIn says you take people from chaos to scalable systems.
Yes.
Could you I'm curious, because I'm sure that you've got some good stories to tell. What's some of the chaos that you found yourself walking into?
Oh, so chaos typically means I have no sales process, right? So all my salespeople do whatever they want to do, right? Because I, as the owner of the company or the sales leader of the company, I haven't told everybody this is what works and this is what doesn't work. So, follow this process. Most companies don't do that. Most companies don't dictate that. Most companies that are small have salespeople in them that didn't want to be salespeople when they started their life, which is probably true for everybody. Most kids in high school, if you go and ask them, I don't want to be a salesperson. No, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an influencer, whatever, right? I want to be a social media giant. I want to be a podcaster. Sales is really low on that list, right? But it starts to become higher on the list when you are on the list as you get closer to having to pay bills. So people become salespeople because they have to pay their bills. They have to get a job, and that's fine. I'm not against that. I do wish that more universities taught people how to be salespeople, but they don't, and that's what it is. That puts the onus, though, on the person and the employer to teach salespeople how to be a good salesperson, because they're not going to learn about it in college. You can only get a degree in sales for less than 20 universities in the United States. So it's not a place where you get a degree. You have to learn it after you get the degree. And because of that, most salespeople struggle when they first start out. Most sales leaders were never trained on how to be a sales leader or a salesperson. So the chaos is I don't have a standard way of doing things in my company. I don't have a standard way to talk about what my product or my service does. I don't have a standard person that I want to call on. I don't have a standard industry that I want to call on. I'll call on anybody that I can talk to, kind of thing. That's chaos. That is just running around trying to do whatever deal I possibly can do. That's chaos. Having a process and having a system is, okay, let's figure out who is our ideal client profile. What's our value to them? How are we going to convey that value? What price are we going to charge for that value? And can we charge more? Most people can charge more. How are we going to go through this entire process of convincing a customer to buy from us? Which means, how do I convince a customer or prospect to trust me? There's an old adage that says, you know when a salesperson is lying, their lips are moving, right? You've heard it before. Maybe some people call that lawyers, some people call that other professions, but it's really common to blame that on sales. But the reality is most B2B salespeople don't lie to get a deal. They can't, because if you lie to get a deal, the customer's not going to be happy and you're not going to get a repeat customer. And most B2B relationships are not one and done kind of relationships. It's not like buying a car, buying a house. You're going to buy that same product over and over and over again a lot of times, most B2B relationships. So because of that, you can't lie, because you'll never get the repeat order. You'll never get that customer to buy again. And so we don't lie, typically, but nobody believes us either. So the whole idea is I have to trust my product is going to solve your problem, and I have to convince you to trust that product, which means you have to trust me, which means you have to trust the people who make that product, and you have to trust the product. And sales is nothing more than transferring trust from me, the salesperson, to you and saying, trust that the product will solve your problem. That's all sales is. Now, when you get good at sales, you add one little wrinkle to that and say, and do that transaction at the time frame that I want you to do the transaction, right? Because I need it this quarter, I need it this year, I need it this month, because I have a number to make, I have a quota to make. So that's the other part of the sales game. But reality is, if you don't trust that it's going to work, then you fail.
So then what would you say is the biggest failures that you see of the people who are self-taught in this world of sales that didn't plan to be there?
The number one failure, number one. I'm going to say the number one failure is they don't have a sales process. They don't do the same thing over and over again. So I hope you don't mind me revealing some of your background here, but when we talked before you turned everything on, before you turned on these lights, you talked about you had the same cameras, right? To make it easy. Yeah. It's repeatable. You do the same thing. Every camera is going to be the same size, same number of pixels, whatever you do with cameras. I don't know. So that just made sense, right? To you, as you're setting up your environment, you have the same microphones, so the same sound dynamics is going into the computer and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, why would you do anything different than that in sales? If I do the same thing over and over again and it works, I can tweak it and make it a little bit better. If I do the same thing over and over again and it doesn't work, I can throw it away or tweak it to make it better. But whatever, I have something to improve. If I do something different every single time, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know why I lost. Was it because I called the guy an idiot before when he didn't buy or right away? Maybe that was it. I don't know, right? So if I do the same thing over and over again, I can now make it better. So, and that includes all of the other things that could have been included in the number one list. But overall, the thought process that you can do something unique and for every single prospect really means that you're winging it all the time, which means you never figure out how to make it better. And if you don't have a process, then you can't fix the process. You can't improve the process. I have a friend who says, if you don't have a repeatable process, then you don't have a repeatable sales process. And so you got to do the same thing over and over again. And that's probably the number one mistake.
So then what would you say are some of the core tenets of a repeatable sales process?
Well, the first thing you got to do is got to find your customer, right? Most people call that discover or prospecting. If you want to put a stage on it, like if you have a CRM system. So the first thing you got to do is you got to find your customer, and that finding the customer is really, really important. So who is your ideal client profile? It's a term that you'll hear marketing people talk. They'll say it a lot. Who is our ideal client profile? How do we describe that person? And I like to describe it as a target, a bullseye that you would see in a bar that you throw darts at. If you go in a bar and they got a dartboard against the wall, you'll notice in the very center of it, there's a red circle, but it's a circle still. I want to be the dot in the center of the red circle. That is my ideal customer. And then any customer that we want to talk about that's not exactly like that, that's fine, but how far off are they? And what you want to make sure is, are they at least on the dartboard? Because if they're on the wall, you're not going to score at all, right? I mean, it's going to be just hard work to win the game if you're always hitting the wall, right? In the game of darts. So that first part is finding your customer. Find the one that's closest to the center of that red dot. And that is the best place to start. So that's the first step of a repeatable process. Like, I'm always looking for this kind of client. That's what I want. I want this size. I want this demographic. I want it to be in this region of the country, in the world. I want it to be a public company. I want it to be a private company. I want it to be a nonprofit. Whatever that is for that product that you're selling, what is the ideal customer and how do you describe it? And describe it as closely and precisely as possible. And the way I kind of coach clients for that is look for a client that was fun to sell to. Like when they heard what you did, they're like, oh, where have you been all my life? And they just bought. Now that's a high standard, but if you have that, that's your ideal. That's the center of your target because they just got it immediately. They immediately understood your value proposition, and then you kind of were able to close the deal. So that's the very first step that you have to do is find your customers. And then you have to figure out, well, does my customer today have a problem today that they want to spend money on? So that's qualification, right? Because just because they're ideal customer doesn't mean that today they have that problem, right? They might have that problem tomorrow, right? Today they may not. So that's qualification. I kind of want to talk to the person that has the problem tomorrow, but I really want to talk to the person that has the problem today, right? Because that's ones that are going to spend money today. So qualification is the next step. And after qualification, after we know that this is a good possible customer for us to sell to, now we have to start the process of getting them to trust us. And you do that by asking great questions. I call these discovery. So I'm going to ask great questions. So I really dig into how big is your problem? When's your problem have to be done? If there's an impending or compelling event, when is that happening? All of those kind of questions. So that discovery questions, right? And then you want to say, look, my product costs about this much. And is that going to be kind of in your budget? If I come up with a way to solve all of your problems that we just discussed, and it costs about that much, not a quote, just about this much, all right, would you be okay with that? Sure, I would be okay making that transaction happen. Okay, I call that the economic buyer meeting. Are you okay spending this much money to solve that problem? And then you say politely, in some way, what do I have to do to convince you that I can solve that problem that we've been discussing for this much money? What don't you know already about what I'm doing? And this is the first time you're starting to sell. Everything up till now, you're just understanding the customer. You're just understanding their budget, what their process, what their decision-making process is. That's all you're doing. And you're saying, now what do I have to do? What else do I have to do? And the economic buyer may say something like, I need to talk to 3 potential other customers that you have. I may need to run it myself for a month, or you may have to train my junior engineer how to use it for a week, right? Whatever that criteria is. And if that's too high of a lift, then you say, I'm sorry, I can't do it for that much money. I can't do all that work for this much money. Can we compromise on that? Can we negotiate down? That's a lot. Like, I'm not going to give you my product for 5 years before you buy it. It's not going to happen, right? But that might be a request, right? Give it to me for 5 years and I'll tell you if I like it. Right? So no, can't do that. So we're going to negotiate down to what is we can afford to do to convince that customer so that we're still financially profitable to do that deal. And then you do those things. That's the verification step or validation step, whichever way you want to say it. And then it's all about negotiation and closing, which is what everybody thinks that all salespeople do. But we've done all this other stuff beforehand. So if you think of breaking those things down into 5 to 7 steps, depending on your industry, depending on what's going on, then that's a sales process.
I think one of the scariest things that I've seen small businesses run into from what you were just saying there is actually defining a narrow ICP.
I agree.
That feels really scary.
It is hard.
How, like, obviously you said if you loved working with this person, like, why do you say that they have to be so narrow?
Because you want to know when it varies. So if I describe my perfect, I don't have to just sell to my perfect customer, my perfect prospect, but it's really good if I can get as close as I possibly can to that perfection, right? So the variations are fine. Yes. I'll make up a scenario, right? So let's say for my perfect customer, I need to be selling to a $50 to $100 million manufacturer of something with paper, okay? It could be boxes, whatever, right? So $50 million to $100 million, somewhere in that range. If I get below 50, well, that's kind of a hard sell. My product's kind of expensive. They may not be able to afford it. If I get above 100, man, we've just never been successful selling to those kind of companies before. So 50 to 100, ideally 75, because we've done really good. We've had 5 customers that are $75 million, between 70 and 75, and we nail those every time. Okay, so you describe that, and then where they live and where that company is and all those other things you can describe as well. And then you get a deal that is a $40 million company. So it's outside of my range. Well, as long as you know why they aren't your ideal, you can figure out if it's too much work to go after them. But maybe it's, okay, that light version of our product that we haven't got quite working, maybe that's a better product. Or maybe instead of buying 10, which most of our customers will buy, this one's only going to buy 5, which means I have to do less sales effort because it's a smaller deal. It's got to be quicker. It's got to be less expensive. All those things have to come into play. So, but I can now make an intelligent decision about who not to call on. And that's where the chaos happens that we talked about before, because if I'm trying to fit a square peg into a round hole or vice versa, a round peg to put a square hole, it's always hard. And you're not going to have a perfect fit no matter what. Yeah, you can do it. You make the peg really small and it'll fit in anything, right? So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that this product, I can sell it profitably. I can maximize the amount of time that I'm going to spend. I can maximize my return on my time as I spend with that customer. And I can spend that time effectively so that I'm okay. And if it's outside of that target, outside of that ideal client profile, as it starts to get wider in that dartboard, I can still get that deal, but I have to understand that my risk is higher on losing it. And if I'm full, then don't do it, right? If I have lots of customers, then don't go after it, right? Because it's not perfect. But if I'm not full, okay, but I'm going to make an intelligent decision about how much time it's going to be. The profitability might be different than I expect, whatever. And that's okay too. But now you're making an intelligent decision instead of going after anything. Most CFOs will say, yeah, some customers are good, some customers are bad. Most companies will tell you, most analysts will tell you, you need to rank your customers A, B, and C. Well, your C's are probably the ones that are not even hitting the dartboard. So be careful. Are you making enough money on those customers to be profitable? And this is America. The goal of being in business is to make a profit. And it's a good thing, right? It's how we get employed. It's how we grow our company. It's how we employ more people. It's how we make sure those people have long-term jobs, right? So our job as salespeople is to generate profit. And we need to be cautious that we aren't doing deals that don't maximize the company's profit.
That's so smart. That is so true, though. Like, I know that early on in my business owning journey, there were way too many times I just chased saying yes.
Okay.
And I think what you kind of sound like you're describing is like an abundance mindset.
Yes.
There's more customers out there. I don't need this.
Yes.
Like, but that's really hard for a struggling business, like brand new, trying to start up, like building an organization. What do you say to the person who is maybe in that early stage of a business and is trying to set up a sales process, but feels like they can't say no to anyone who comes their way?
I tell them they can and have the confidence that they can. Now, if you're trying to pay your bills, right? Like you have zero revenue coming in, that's a little bit of a different situation. If you're in a zero revenue situation, though, it's like, how fast can I get to easy? That's your process, right? So yeah, I'm going to take some bad deals along the way so I can just pay the bills. Okay, fine. But let's as quickly as we can get to easy so that we can grow faster. I have this conversation a lot with my clients, and my clients as a fractional VP of sales are relatively small companies, right? Less than 10 salespeople, maybe less than 15 salespeople, sometimes zero salespeople. Sometimes it's the owner that's doing the selling. So I talk to my clients and I say, what do you think your market share is? How big is your market? You know, we kind of do some estimating. I'm not going to do a study or anything, but you know, how many of companies like you are there? I had a client one time, and I won't name the client, but they said there's a lot. And we went into some sources, spent 5 minutes, and we found 10,000 companies that are in the category that they were. I go, do you agree there's about 10,000 companies in the United States that do what you do? Just the United States, not Canada, not Mexico, not China, just the United States. And the guy goes, yeah, 10,000, that sounds about right. Interesting. So what do you think your market share is? I don't know. I have no clue. Well, let's just assume that all of those 10,000 companies, everyone except for you, is half the size of you. That means whatever you did, it's 5,000 times bigger than that if they're half the size of you. I go, are they all half the size of you? He goes, oh, no, there's some that are really big. Oh, so your market share is probably less than 1 in 5,000. It's probably closer to 1 in 20,000. Do you really need to be anything but picky? Like you have an unlimited number of companies to call on.
Yep.
Unlimited. It's the same company that when I first started talking to them, they said, you know, this was a couple years ago and the economy wasn't fantastic. And they're like, yeah, but we're thinking there's going to be a little recession, a little bit of pullback on the marketplace. We're not thinking we should grow. This is not the owner. This is one of the owner's employees. And I was like, and I kind of did that same math that I'd already done with the owner about why we can grow. I was like, that's interesting. So if we say the market is, let's just make up a number just to make it easy. Let's just say it's $1 billion market. And I said, do you agree it's at least $1 billion? And he's like, oh, sure, it's probably 5. Let's just say $1 billion. Let's not go to the 5 billion. The math is harder. And let's just say we have a 3% pullback on the market. Right? The economy drops 3%, which is a big deal. Right? That's a big deal. So that means, and I'm going to screw up the math while I'm online here, but that means it's a $997 million market. It's not $1 billion market anymore. It's a $997 million market. And you are a $10 million company. Do you really think it matters? Aren't there a lot more people that made a decision to buy from somebody else than made a decision to buy from you? So that abundance mindset, when you are small, yeah, you need to think of it as an abundance mindset. However, when you have a 50% market share, now we'll talk about, I don't know if the economy may affect us, right? And I've worked for companies that had 40 or 50% market share. I worked for some really big brand names that was an issue. Like, we can't get above 42%. That's hard. It's really, really hard.
What an issue. Yeah, wow.
Exactly. But when you're a small business doing $5 million in revenue, $10 million in revenue, $20 million in revenue, there are more people deciding not to buy from you than there are people that are deciding to buy from you. and it's by a factor of 100. So figure out what you do really well and just do it really, really well.
That's so smart. I love that. I think some people just seem to think that abundance mindset is just something you choose to have, but I love the data you have behind it. That is so valuable. Even if it's not real data, it's just like just thinking through the numbers.
Right.
That's so smart. There's this moment in your sales process where you said, I could, like, we could solve this for around X number of dollars, would that be something you'd do?
Yeah.
That feels like, to me, as somebody who's not a talented salesperson, that feels like a gutsy step to do.
It's the hardest thing in sales.
Is it?
It's the hardest thing to do in sales. Because I'm going to put all my cards on the table. And I'm going to say, I can do it for this. What do you think, Mr. Customer? And the customer might say, not even close. Right? That's 10 times what I'm expecting to pay. Great. Thank you very much. I'll talk to somebody else down the street. Right? I mean, it's the abundance mindset. Like, you really need to think of, look, it's going to cost you about this much. And some people say, well, I don't want to do a quote too soon, or I have to go through all these steps in order to get a quote approved. I'm like, really? You really don't even know in a ballpark what this thing costs as a salesperson? I mean, I get it if you're brand new. If you've been there for 3 months, I really don't know what my product costs. Okay. But I've been doing this for 4 years or 5 years or 10 years. You have some idea. I mean, you should be able to kind of look at what you got and say, I did one of those 2 years ago and 4 years ago that were that size, and it cost this much money, right? So just have the conversation with the economic buyer. I think it's going to cost this much money. And then you can get all kinds of things on the table that you have to then take care of, well, for that much money, you're going to have to do this and prove that. And well, great. Now I know exactly what you want me to do so that I can turn around tomorrow and I can solve those problems. Perfect. And I can start knocking them out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That makes sense. I guess one of the things that I struggle with in those moments is like the, okay, I'll move on kind of conversation, because like being such a relational person, I feel like bad saying, okay, see ya. Kind of like I know that it's not quite like that, but like I know that there are some salespeople out there that exist that are in that space. And I think for me, that's where I struggle to be okay with like, all right, see you guys later.
So you don't want to be quite that blunt, right?
Yeah.
But it does make sense. It's like, Mr. Customer, I appreciate what you just said. I can't do it for that much money. I just can't. And I'm sorry, there are other people out there that can afford this much money. We've sold the same thing multiple times. And all of our other customers have been able to cost justify it at this level of pricing. And I get that you can't. I totally understand. I am empathetic to that problem, but I can't do business at that level. And I'm sorry, but this is why I actually wanted to have this meeting now, before your team spends all kinds of time, all kinds of effort trying to justify and figure out how to buy my product. If you tell me that is just, we are that far off, you're at 10% of my price, then it's not worth your time to investigate it. So let's just be friends. And maybe something will change in the future. And I'm not offended. I haven't spent a ton of time. I've asked you a bunch of questions. Your team have answered a bunch of questions. We haven't done a lot of work because all that validation stuff that I told you about before in the sales process, that's all happening next. But I'm not going to do any of that because you can't afford it. And that's perfectly fine. Mr. Customer, I'm not upset. I'm really not upset. I hope you're not upset either that your team spent 45 minutes before our meeting talking to me and answering my questions and make sure I was there. And now we've spent 15 minutes here talking about this, and that's an hour out of your life. And I apologize that we did that, but I'm okay if you're okay. And I wish you well, but I can't solve your problem for that amount of money. I just can't.
That's so smart. That is. And then it just doesn't waste anyone's time.
It just doesn't waste anyone's time.
Yeah.
And they'll change their price.
Yeah.
It's a great negotiating tactic because the guy will go, you're right. I can't buy it from anybody else for that amount of money either. That's why you want to be polite about it. Because they may not be ready to make that decision, right? They may not be able to say, yeah, we can only spend this much money, but it's a bigger problem. Because before this, we have started to figure out how big is the problem. Mm-hmm. If I can show, because of all that discovery I did before that meeting, that this is $1 million a year problem that you have, and I'm going to solve it for a $50,000, just to make easy numbers, right? $50,000 investment, $1 million return in 5 years or 3 years, whatever makes sense, right? Then we can say, if 50,000 is too much to solve $1 million problem, I get it. I'm not going to try to talk you out of that. If you think you can solve the problem for 5, you're 10% my price, then you should. That would be a better ROI. You should absolutely go solve it there. If you can do that, then you should do that. I advise you go do that 10% price, because I assume you can do that and go solve that problem. And what almost always happens then is I go, well, I really can't do it for that price. Oh, well, what do you think you could do it for? Right? Now I'm talking business, right? Mm-hmm. But remember, I'm still trying to solve $1 million problem in this situation. Maybe it's a $50,000 problem, and if I'm selling a $50,000 product for a $50,000 problem, no, that's not a sell, right? So it's got to be a factor above that. And if you're not there, then you're not going to get a deal, and that's fine. Go talk to somebody else, because there is somebody else to talk to. That is not the only company in town that can buy your product. It's not the only company in your region, in your territory, that you can sell your product to. So you need to understand that I don't want to waste any more time, and I'm not being mean about this, but I don't want to waste any more time talking to a customer who can solve that problem for that good of a price. I want to go talk to somebody who can't do that. And therefore, I'll get that deal, right?
Yeah.
Go call on customers that will buy from you. Don't call on customers that won't. And the faster you figure that out, the better off you are. And that's the chaos that we talked about at the beginning, right? Is running around calling on a lot of companies that can't buy from you, that won't buy from you. Well, don't do that. Call on companies that'll buy from you.
So then when people call you now as a fractional CFO or CRO, right? CRO. What is the primary space that they're in, that chaos, that you come in and say, okay, I got a plan, I'll fix this?
Mm-hmm. So all my clients are different, obviously. There's a couple things that tend to be the same. Well, first of all, I can't be the fractional VP of sales or fractional chief revenue officer for a company larger than has 15 salespeople. It just doesn't make practical sense. 15 salespeople, figure I'm going to do one meeting with them as a team. I'm going to do one meeting with the management of the company so I can make sure I'm listening to what the management wants to do. So that's 2 meetings per week, plus half hour to an hour with each one of those salespeople. Now I'm looking at doing 17 to 20 hours for that team. And as a fractional person, I can't spend 20 hours with one company, right? Because I could, but costs would be upside down, right?
Yeah.
So my target market is pretty much 10 to 12 salespeople. That's big for me. A lot of times I'll have 8 to 10 or smaller. So the reason I say that is that kind of company is in a different problem set than a company that has 1 or 2 salespeople and they're trying to figure out how to grow. So the 1 or 2 salesperson problem typically is I took people who had never sold before. They worked for my company. They had the gift of gab. They were easy to talk to, so I made them a salesperson. They know everything about my product, so I made them a salesperson. They were great at doing solutions of my product, so I made them a salesperson. Well, 9 times out of 10, and I hate using a metric like that when I don't know the exact number, so I apologize for that. But in a lot of the times, when you only have 1 or 2 salespeople, you didn't do some basic things that make salespeople successful. Like you don't have a process because you don't know. You as an owner of a company, you don't understand the sales process. So how in the world would you ever figure it out for your own company, right? So that's one big problem. I see that a lot. But I also see Everybody is really confident and they know what they're doing and they're being successful, but they don't know how to hire the third salesperson. And that's where it becomes tough, right? So my 1 or 2 salespeople, yeah, they're doing just fine. But every time I try to hire a third, oh, now I got a problem because they don't have the 20 years of experience with the company of knowing everything about the company and just be able to solve all the problems, which is what 1 and 2 did. So now at the third one, I can't scale, so I can't grow. And most of my clients call me because they cannot grow. They are comfortable where they're at, but they have some desire to be bigger than that. They have some desire to be, if they're $5 million a year, they have desire to be 10. If they're 10, they have desire to be 12. And sometimes they get in a situation where for a brief period of time, they were at that level and then it came back down. The economy changed, COVID happened. COVID was a big changer for a lot of companies. Revenue went up in some cases because of what they sold and how they sold it. Or, customers had to buy it fast. So revenue went up. And they get in a situation where now the revenue's come down. And I liked it when revenue was at $25 million. I don't like being at 20.
Yeah.
I like 25 much better, right? They might be in a situation where they want to sell the company, owner of the company. And, we have this problem in America where, and I don't know the right stat, so I'm not going to try to quote it, but there are thousands of companies out there every year that are trying to sell their company, every day, I think, that are trying to sell their company. And their owners are trying to retire. And they know that selling a $3 million company is not nearly as profitable and won't last me into retirement nearly as long as if I'm selling a $10 million company. So how do I I'm 55 or whatever, before I hit 60, how do I get from 3 million to 10 million? Because a $10 million company is going to be bigger paycheck when I retire. I'll have a longer earn out process, whatever. So I see that a lot as well. I also see, and this was interesting when I was doing this analysis with a business broker friend of mine, and I kind of walked through all my clients, and I found out that the biggest percentage of my clients were the second generation, or I just bought the company. So they were not the founders. That founder transition had happened, but now I'm the son, the daughter of the founder, or the son, the grandson, granddaughter, whatever. Or maybe I bought the company from the original founder and now I've got to make it. Maybe I'm an employee that bought out the company, whatever. And they're in this situation like, okay, I bought it. I incurred some debt in that buying process. Maybe it's debt back to the original founder. Maybe it's debt to the bank. Either way, it's debt. I got to pay it back. So I have to make the company grow because otherwise, why would I have bought it? I got to make the company grow and I got to be able to take care of my family for X number of years off of this. So I got to make that company grow. I want to be able to hand it off to my family when I decide to retire. So I have to grow and I got to service this debt, which the founder didn't have to service. So I have to grow to just pay off the bank. So I do see a good portion of my clients that are in that mode as well, where they have to service that debt and they have to grow their way out of that situation. And that's fun. That really is fun.
Really?
Yeah. Because that means they don't have any of but this is how we always do it. I'm sorry. This is how we've always done it because they're the new owner. They can break anything. So there's that situation. And there is the genuine desire to grow. I have to get to this level in order to successfully handle that debt. So everything's on the table. How do we grow? How do we make that happen? How do we increase the revenue? How do we increase the profitability?
That's awesome. I love that. Man, I could keep asking questions on this, but I wanted to save some of our time because you're a podcaster yourself.
Yep.
You've got 2 shows.
Yes.
Remind me the names of them.
Okay. My first show, the one I've been doing longest, I do it with a gentleman by the name of Kevin Lawson, who's also another fractional VP of sales here in Greater Cincinnati. And Kevin and I do a show called Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. I'm 6'3", but Kevin is like 6'7", which at 6'7", that means you're at 99 percentile of everybody in the United States, right? So 6'3" means you're like a 92 percentile or something like that. So we're taller than most people we meet. And so we called it Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. And when you meet Kevin, you look up. I mean, just see. Yeah,
I have met Kevin. He is very tall.
Yeah, you look up. So it's easy to say Two Tall Guys Talking Sales.
I love it.
And we were just going to do Two Guys Talking Sales or just talking sales, but then Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. It kind of has a little bit of ring. People remember it. Oh, you're one of the tall guys. Which one are you? I say I'm the short one with gray hair.
There you go. But I'm really excited about your new one. It's about 10 episodes in, I think, right now.
Yes.
And that one is
AI Tools for Sales Pros.
Awesome. Okay. I have a lot of questions about this. So I'm curious. There's so many social media people who like to claim that AI is replacing the salesman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, what is your thought on that?
So I love that you asked me. And this cool is you asked me without even me prompting you in advance. So it's kind of cool. The last sentence of my podcast, if I don't screw it up and when I say it, is AI is not going to replace sales. AI is going to augment sales, and let's build the future together. So the reality is that one-to-one relationship, that how do I trust you? I just started this whole episode. We talked a lot about trust already, right? How do you trust AI? You can't trust AI, right? That's a machine, that's a computer, that's whatever, that's just information. People buy based on trust. I trust that this is going to work. Customers rarely have 100% of the information they need in order to make a decision. They get to a confidence level in making that decision. This is going to work for me. I look at it like if you've ever rented an apartment, bought a house, bought a condo, did you know for sure that you weren't going to have, especially if you bought, that you weren't going to have a furnace problem? No. You didn't know that for sure. You had people look. Did you know for sure your roof wasn't going to leak? No, you had somebody crawl around and look and I don't see any leaks, but that doesn't mean in a week from now it's not going to leak, right? So we never have 100% of the information that we need in order to make an intelligent decision. We make educated decisions all the time. And buying is nothing more than a made decision. That's all it is. So AI cannot build trust. It can give you information. It can ask you, it can feed a lot of information to you. It can feed it in a way that makes sense to you. But AI is not going to do that. So, company that has that 42% market share that we alluded to before, right? Can they go turn everything over to the internet, to the AI? Can they just make it all online? Sure, because they have 42% market share. And if they lose a couple percentage points, who cares? If the cost goes down, then yeah, who cares? If they go down to 38% market share, but their costs go down 98% in the process of getting a customer, that would be a win. They should do that, right? But the company that is at the same market trying to be the one of the other companies in that 58% that's left, well, they have an 8% market share. They can't go down. They can't afford to take that hit, right? In fact, they want to grow to 12%. They don't care about coming back a couple to save some customer acquisition cost numbers. So if you've ever watched Shark Tank, a bunch of guys sitting at a table or a circle, just like chairs just like this, they'll say, what's your customer acquisition cost, right? So for the company that's doing 42% customer acquisition costs, how do we get that down? If I can get that down to 2% of that number and not take a big hit on how much revenue I make, that's a win. That's a good thing. However, if I'm one of the people that are picking up the scraps, doing the crumbs, and I'm at 8% market share or 5% market share, and I want to grow, well, I'm not really worried about my customer acquisition costs going down. I'm worried about my customer acquisition costs being better used, being augmented, I'll even increase it if it means my revenue will go up. So for the 42% company, use AI, live with the fact that you're going to lose 10% market share. For everybody else, you got to use salespeople because you have to go out there and make sure that you are imparting trust and gathering trust of the customer so that they buy from you and not the guy who just got rid of all the salespeople and now you're talking to a chatbot, right? Now, when I answer that question though, I am talking about B2B sales. I'm not talking about the other type of sales, which is a B2C. A company makes a product and they sell it on Amazon. If you're already buying from Amazon, that's already a AI-like experience. Can they make that better? Absolutely. Right? If I'm going to go buy a TV, I don't really need the salesperson to give me all the information. I can look it all up. I can read it. Sure, there's some portion of the economy that'll say, but I really need to ask that salesperson those questions. I need them to explain it to me, show me how it works. Great, I understand that. But for a huge number of people, they don't have to have that anymore. They bought enough TVs in their career. You probably have bought a couple TVs in your life, and you probably really don't need a salesperson to tell you, right? I need this size. I need this many pixels. It has to have these kind of specs. Ooh, what was that? I got to look that up. I got to read about that one a little bit.
Yeah.
AI is perfect for that, right?
And the budget for customer acquisition has to be so small.
Exactly, because my margin is zero.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So for B2B sales, that's not the case. Now, here's the killer. If I can make 10 sales calls a week without using AI, then doesn't it make sense that if I can make 12 sales calls, that I'd be that much better, right? Makes sense, right? So AI is a great tool for productivity. How can I do things faster? How can I write proposals faster? How can I do RFPs faster? That target market, that ideal client profile, how do I figure that out as fast as I possibly can? A brand new lead came in, and I got to figure out how does it fit compared to my ideal client profile. If I could push a button, or better yet, just have automatic when the lead came in, have it scored so that this is how it fits versus your ideal client profile. This is where it varies. This is where this company that just reached out to you, this is how it varied a little bit. And you could go, that variation, I can live with that. And I can now call on that. Versus me having to go figure that out and asking lots of questions. Sure, if AI can help me solve that problem, that's a plus.
Yeah.
So AI can make good salespeople great and make great salespeople wealthy. So AI is not going to replace sales. It's just going to make us better at it.
So then what are you seeing as some of your favorite augmentations that you're seeing on the market right now?
So then my number one, the one I tell everybody to do today, right? And in fact, it's what I just did a podcast on, and it's literally what I do presentations on when I talk about this. I talk about all the really hard stuff, all the really cool stuff about using AI. And everybody's heads are spinning at the time. And then I go, but today, what are you going to do today when you get home? And I'm going to tell them right now, you need to go buy Grammarly, right? It's a simple tool, right? It's the simplest thing you can do. It's based on AI, so you're using AI to solve a problem. Most salespeople have to write. We have to write emails. We have to write RFP responses, proposals. We have to do LinkedIn profile stuff, LinkedIn social media stuff. We have to write a ton. And I'm sure you've seen it. I know I see it all the time. I get that email coming to me that's a blind email that I've never seen before. And I read it, and every fifth word is spelled wrong, or the grammar's wrong, right? And I'm not going to say I'm a grammar icon, but I see bad grammar, and what are they trying to say? It's not clear. It's not worded right. I don't understand. Delete, right? So the tendency is if I don't understand it, if I don't understand the offer, if I can't read it and understand what I'm getting, well, my first inclination is delete. I don't want to deal with that. So write it well. And if there's a tool out there that would make all salespeople just write it well, well, that's Grammarly.
That is an interesting statement for you to say, because there is this pop culture movement that seems to indicate that the value of spelling mistakes is actually going up because people believe that it's a real person emailing them versus somebody who is using AI to write everything.
And that's probably true to some degree. Like if you always, like who uses a semicolon when they write? I mean, I don't even know how to hit that on the keyboard, right? Let's be honest, right? So if you see 4 semicolons in a paragraph, dude, you did too much work, right? If you got that right. So so I totally get it. However, if you misspell my name, and I have a really easy name to misspell, I'm going to forgive you, but I'm going to question you. Like, did you try? Right? Now, that's if I just want to get to know you, if whatever, right? However, if I am going to buy $1 million from you, you better spell my company name right.
Yeah.
Why can't you spell my company name right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? If this thing that you're selling me, if let's just say lights, since there's lights up here, if I'm sending you a proposal and I spell light, L-I-T-E, and it's not the name brand, because I'm sure there's a light out there that has a name brand of light, L-I-T-E, then I'm going to go, do you know what you're selling? Like it's L-I-G-H-T. Maybe it's spelled differently in other countries, but in the United States, it's L-I-G-H-T. Unless there's a brand name on it that says it's L-I-T-E, right? Or something else like that. So that misspelling, that doesn't work, right? Spell it right.
Yeah.
Right? Simple as that. Just spell it right. And most people don't notice when it's correct. They notice when it's wrong. And
yes.
And do you want that to be the center of the message you're trying to do? That, hey, I intentionally misspelled this? Or just, it's a non-issue. You read what I wrote, you understood it, and you didn't even think about the fact that you read it and you understood it. That's probably better than not doing it. So using Grammarly. And Grammarly is AI-based. It'll help you write it in different ways. It'll make it friendly or more business. You can put all kinds of things. If you have some of the higher level versions of Grammarly, you can share what the tone is so that all of our salespeople have the same tone. We can put snippets out there that all of our salespeople say the same thing to this kind of answer. And there's lots of ways to do snippets, but it's built into Grammarly.
That's cool.
And affects, it's all driven by AI. It's an AI tool that literally you can turn on today, get productive with today, and it won't screw you up. It's perfectly easy, right? So I tell everybody, start with that because it's AI based already. It's already got it all built in. So just use that.
So then here's another question I have for you, because we run into this personally. We tried a cold email outreach system that was AI based, that also included basically like an AI conversationalist in it. So like if someone responded, it would do things like qualify, is this interested, is it not interested, like, but then it would also have conversations with them a little bit, like back and forth.
Right.
What we found is that it tended to break our brand. Why would you say that is it? Like, what do you think about that sort of thing? And what would you say to us using something like that?
You probably didn't spend enough money to get a tool that wouldn't break your brand, right? So there are some really, really, really good tools that are out there, and I don't know that I want to name them on this podcast, but there's some really good tools. So that industry or that concept, what you're talking about, it's all kind of built into this account-based marketing or account-based sales kind of industry. And there is one or two tools on the market that in the Gartner chart of AI tools that solve this problem, they are up here. I realize that doesn't mean anything to anybody unless I do, and everybody else is here, right? Okay. There's this big moat between two companies that do it incredibly well and everybody else that does it kind of well. And chances are you bought somebody that does it kind of well. Now, that doesn't mean that product that you bought that didn't quite work, it doesn't mean they're not going to get better and they're not going to get there someday, right? So let's be honest about that. But today, there's only one or two companies that are really doing it well, and they aren't doing it all that great. That's the other issue, right?
Yeah.
So we are, 4 years in this large language model world of AI, right? So Chat GPT-2 didn't work. I mean, it worked, but you couldn't do anything effective with it, right? 2.5 kind of worked, and now we're at 5, which is not that much better than 4, especially 4.1. It is better, right? But and that's just on the ChatGPT side. The Gemini side has a different problem for Google. So the reality is we are very, very young in this world of artificial intelligence. So that problem that you just described will be solved. And thank you very much for trying and not being successful, because that just shows that company, we got to improve this or that in order to get better, right? And that's fine, right? We're young in that journey. And what you just described is the really, really hard thing to do that I tell people, look, if you're not going to spend 6 months doing this and spend a lot of resources to solve this problem, then don't bother, because that's the hard problem to solve, right? Yeah. Don't go for the hard problem. Go for the easy one. just make sure your words come out right. Right? The whole goal of I want to automate everything. Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
Right? And you could more accurately measure the amount of time we've had with good AI by months rather than years, right? So really want to automate everything you do with a product that's only months old? No. Let's automate something that's years old, right? So I was a Grammarly customer 10 years ago. So it's years old, right? They measure their life in years. I have something like 35 million words that Grammarly has double checked for me in my life of my relationship with them. When I first started using it, it wasn't nearly as good as it is now, right? So, and it wasn't AI based; it was rule based back then. But so I guess my point is that problem that you just described is the problem that will be solved. It is very, very hard to solve it. It takes a ton of information about you and your customer. I really mean a ton of information about you and a ton of information about your customer. And it's just not ready yet. That doesn't mean it won't be, because it will, but it's just not ready yet. Don't automate the world. Automate one thing.
So then the last question I have for you, because we're running out of time. There's always this concept in the world of business to never stop learning. Mm-hmm. Who are you currently learning from right now, and why do you like listening to them?
Very interesting. So I'm going to go to AI again. I'm not going to say I'm done learning on sales. Because I never think I'm done. So I don't want to give that impression. I'm still learning. I'm still rereading the same books. I'm still listening to the same people. A lot of the people that I learned a lot from have passed away because they're so old, right? But I still reread their stuff. I read a book that I read back in 1986. I read it every 2 years. It's Strategic Selling by Miller Hyman. It was published in 85 or 86. And I still read Strategic Selling every 2 years. So I've read it many, 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 many times. And I still pick up nuggets or, I didn't think about it anymore, right? So there's the masters, the Zig Ziglar, the Miller Hyman, Bosworth, who wrote several books. So there's a lot of really people. Brian Tracy, who I think is still with us, but I don't think he's putting out that many books anymore. Brian Tracy has 40 or 50 or 100 books that he's written in his lifetime. So there's a lot of people out there that are icons of the industry that I'll read and reread and reread. But because AI is changing sales, and I didn't want to imply by my flip answer before of, you did the really hard thing, don't do that. AI is changing sales. It's a productivity tool that makes things better. And literally next week, as we are recording this, and so it'll probably be released after I get back, I am going to an all-week seminar called MACON, Marketing AI Conference, I think is what it stands for. And I'm spending a whole week learning about AI and how it's going to affect marketing and sales. So everybody that puts stuff out about AI and about automation in sales, I read. I read as much as I possibly can. I am a firm believer that you should read the equivalent of 50 pages every day. So I originally started my career as an engineer. That's what I was trained at. So reading was just part of my life. And getting smart was just a fact of life. You just had to know things. And I'm a firm believer that if you don't read 50 pages of documents every day, then you're going to fall behind. And that probably isn't even enough, right? I mean, these ChatGPT engines, they've read more than I'm ever going to read in my lifetime, and they can spit it out in an hour, right? So you have to read, just constantly be reading, constantly be paying attention. And right now I'm spending a huge amount of my time just trying to make sure that I can be up to speed on what's going on in the world of AI. And literally I could probably just do the announcements and still be done for the day, right? I mean, every day there's new announcements, new things happened. There's things that happened yesterday that I'm still trying to understand for today, right? So it's a fact of life. So I read a lot about AI. Anybody that seems intelligent on how to use AI to solve business problems, I want to read that stuff.
I love it. I think that that's a really valuable thing to do, especially when in the world of technology with everything changing so fast. I've kind of made it a mission of mine to not be like my grandparents who couldn't handle the rise of the computer.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to be the person that is connected on everything. And that's why I like to have people like you on this, where I start to learn more about sales, because I know I'm terrible at it. And so this has been amazing, Sean. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is great. How can people get in contact with you if they want to learn more?
So I am all over LinkedIn. You follow me on LinkedIn. I put out way too much stuff on LinkedIn. So I'm all over LinkedIn. So Sean O'Shaughnessy or S.O'Shaughnessy at LinkedIn.com. That's a great way. My company is New Sales Expert. I know it's a little bit of a grandiose statement when I say that, when I named my company that. It seemed like it made sense at the time. My email address is Sean, S-E-A-N, at newsales.expert. It's not even .com. It's newsales.expert. You can always drop me a note and I'll try to reply back. If you look like it's written by artificial intelligence and it has 14 mistakes in spelling, I probably won't reply.
I love it. And then don't forget to check out his book too, Learning About How to Get a Better Commission. What's the name of the book?
My book that you're referring to is called Eliminate Your Competition.
Eliminate Your Competition. Love it. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. This has been great.
I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Cincinnati Business Podcast. If you like the show, the best way to support us is to like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you fantastic content just like this. And if you are a greater Cincinnati-based business owner who has something you want to share with the world, reach out to me at Brian@CincinnatiPodcastStudio.com.